Welcome to another episode of Grimy Society TV. You know who it is. It's your boy Fever Life. Make sure you stream Fever Life on all platforms. Check out the new music. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe, like, and comment. I need you to subscribe, like, and comment. In that order, subscribe, comment, talk your shit. Let me know how you feel, what you think. And then like, and that's it. And then jump onto grimysociety.com and check it out real quick. Tell me what you think about it. On today's episode, it's going to be a little out there like usual. But we're going to talk first about this U.A.P disclosure from David Grush. And News Nation was the one who released it first. But David Grush was in charge, for those who don't know, in charge of the U.A.P task force. And he was in charge of checking out what's these things that's flying in our sky that we don't know about, you know, and that it's not our military or anything that we can actually say, oh, this is what it is. So on his journey, he figured out that there's a bunch of stuff that maybe the population should know about. So he talked about some of this today. I'm gonna let him talk, and then we're just gonna talk a little bit about that.
The president's efforts and his promise to show true American leadership on this issue of mass for these activities. President Vance's task force is sharply focused on the administration. This should concern everyone lawful for it to be classified. And this is why protections matter. Through my federal litigation ongoing with the Department of War, I learned that the Air Force worked with an external agency to seek an investigation of me for alleged unauthorized disclosures punishable under the Espionage Act after I testified in front of Congress in 2023, discussing the results of my congressionally directed investigation in support of the first Trump administration. This should concern every member of Congress, regardless of party. To this day, I'm still fighting years of record withholding, administrative obstruction, and a prolonged effort to get a medical military retirement that I still am not in a retired status. This is also a real fraud, waste, and abuse issue. President Vance's task force is sharply focused on the issue of misuse of funds. The same accountability problem applies here. And during my investigation, I found slush funds to the tune of billions of dollars per annum for these activities. We cannot have one standard for the American people and another standard for the deep state that hide behind the veil of secrecy. President Trump has the authority to create an enduring legacy of government transparency, accountability.
He gets into, as you can see, a lot of things that, you know, we all kind of already knew about the government. If you listen to what he's saying, he specifically highlights how a lot of this information is foreign, as in it's outside of the parameters of the government's scope and coming from different individuals, different countries maybe. So that's why he said it could be under scrutiny, or you could like look at it like, is this just misinformation? And when you dig into history, like in the 1960s and 50 during the Cold War, a little after that, 1950s. But during the Cold War, that was actually a tactic from Stalin, which was to fake alien invasion or distract America with aliens, you know, and whether they were creating hybrids and some kind of technology that seemed obscured and crashing it into our environment, our country, to distract us and focus on that rather than going to war with them. You know, that's understandable. And that's something that has to be brought into perspective, especially when the CIA themselves, through other projects that you could even find officials speaking themselves of how there was, I posted actually some content too about that, of the individuals speaking on it that were former CIA, how there were a fake alien invasion to distract the population and stuff like that. So you could see that you could find that, you know, information, and it does exist. Now, as a person that I like to say has at least a little bit of basic logic, is our environment is very enthusiastic, and the way life itself is, and just on planet Earth, the way it describes itself is so many variations, right, within that spectrum. So to to say that that doesn't exist outside this environment. I think it would just be kind of a small way, or just not a full perspective to have, or just a limited, right? So David Grush highlights, which I'm trying to find that video. I seen a clip on X of him speaking about these gelatin-like creatures. I guess the best reference would be more towards if you've seen it on Apple, you know that show Invasion, right? Of that gelatin-like creature that could kind of persuade your thoughts and influence you in that way. Like that's the predatory nature of it, rather than consuming, even though it had that factor to it too. But so you could, and then he describes other things, and we could see how it could be maybe, you know, foreign intelligence, old countries that have technology that to us they see maybe obscured or maybe different in some sense. But you can see just as an individual that was placed by the government themselves. So this is, imagine you hire somebody and say, listen, I'm hiring you and I need you to figure out everything that's going on. There's some shit flying in the sky. There's some people keeping some shit in the wraps and not telling us. And we want you to check everything out about it. And now the same individual you sent, like, right, like it's you or me, right? So let's suppose it's me. I come back like, yo, listen, this is what I found, and there's a lot of shit going on, and this shit is fucked up. But then you start not listening to me, right? Only it's chosen for you. And then you start saying, well, wait. We don't want you to, you know, because all the information you learn is kind of overwhelming to a certain degree. Or you're like, what the fuck's been going on, right? So, in just the most simplest perspective, in the most simplest words to describe the situation. So it's like, yo, you sent me to go do this job. I'm telling you what's going on, and now you're trying to hold me to a certain accountability or ready to lock me up because I'm telling you exactly what the fuck you hired me to do and figure out. You know, so logically, you would say I say 99% of individuals in his place would have kept it under wraps. He was that 1% that something nudged him to speak on those events. Now, is it sensationalized for other factors? It could be, but the core factor is an individual that was actually put in this place by the government themselves, is openly speaking about the situation and openly saying that there is outside intelligence to the degree of humans that is not within the human anatomy that exists. And I don't think that's like, with today's technology and understanding, you know, we're not stupid anymore. It's kind of like logical to understand or have that perspective in today's time. So I don't see anything wrong with that, speaking on it. You know, grandpa, or, you know, those individuals that were in place back then that wanted to keep it so disclosed. There's no reason for that anymore. So we can be a little more open about it. You know, I think even those individuals want to be more open about it, but because greedy other individuals don't. So these gelatin-like creatures or species that he describes are, from what I've seen, I can't match or find one relevant on YouTube currently, but on X, there was a video. So until I find it, I don't want to speak too much, but I believe it. I think in all spectrums, and when you say, well, what's that other spectrum, something intelligent that lives outside of this Earth environment perspective, then it would have a different anatomy. It would look completely, space is more like the ocean. So if you look at octopuses and how their intelligence and they're translucent, and they describe, I think that's a similar perspective, more plasma-like. Maybe what it seems is maybe the plasma-like is the translucent of it, and its ability to project its thoughts to that degree, or that's just, of course, that degree is just my perspective, but it's intelligence. So I think in space, or if there's other planets that allow other spectrums of light, or configuration is different spectrums of light than Earth configuration, then you could see how there could be so many problems. And we are back. Small technical glitch that happened. But yeah, so I just think that depending on the environment, life in simple terms can operate differently, you know, and I think we've so into our own world that we exclude how actually life can present itself, an intelligent life at that can present itself, because we so into our own intelligence, and happens to the best of us. But David Grush and that whole situation, we could see how individuals being greedy, hiding in today's time is kind of purposeless, because we will create technology that would seem so obscured. And then the access to information has allowed individuals to a certain degree to understand those probabilities of how life has different variations through those spectrums, right? So it's just crazy though. The individual that you assigned as the government to with this task, whatever administration is, whatever, but you assign this individual, and he's comes out with a bunch of stuff. There's no way you could kind of discredit a lot of it. Whatever emotion is behind it is understandable. You feel me? Like, I can understand, like, which I've had many instances in work environments where situations kind of get a little bit out of hand, and we speak more with emotion. That's the driving factor behind certain things, other than the facts that did occur. So I think he just didn't understand the perspective of why I lied to the entire species, and it makes sense to me. I think I seen that video, like I said earlier, that he spoke on, which I'm gonna include, that the forms of these intelligent species, and the gelatin-like, and I think that's the best way to go. They can't legally hold you accountable, right? Because technically, if you say like the facts that like there is aliens, and they physically look like this and look like that, if they were to hold you accountable for that, then technically they would be disclosing information, right? So I think say the facts, the most far-fetched facts that you know about. And if you did see the body, say it. Fuck it. Why hold that shit? It's like I said before, I think you're that 1%. He was that 1% that, had a different logic and a different perspective than most of the individuals that are kind of enclosed with a certain mindset, and won't allow for this disclosure because they're bots, or they're controlled, or whatever aspect or whatever perspective. But it's about time. So now, what kind of influence do these intelligent beings have on us? I don't know. It could vary from many different dynamics. And if you go into other episodes, I talk more into the perspective of, trying to understand that sixth sense that we neglect. That frequency that doesn't involve our senses. So, if it operates more on that dynamic, if it's a predator on that aspect rather than the actual, like, feeding on individuals or things like that, or it can be a combination of both. But if it's learned to project its thoughts, and this comes off of just preconceived notions and understanding of small understanding of pretty much what I've understood as the sixth sense, or just possibilities of how information can be projected based off technology, right? So that's pretty much a lot of my grounding for my information is like I can program a little bit, right? I can do these things and understand perspectives within, quantum and physics and science, and to neglect the fact of probability of that the human mind could probably, in certain aspects, do the same thing, if not acting in that way, then I would kind of just be like ignorant to certain facts. But I think if I keep that perspective that the human mind can actually operate on certain degrees, that it's not limited to the degrees of technologies, as in we transfer information and we perceive information on similar aspects. But yeah, I think David Grush himself is doing a great job. Thank him for what he's doing. I think go full throttle. Don't be scared. Let's get some other people behind him. Let's get a better understanding of what's actually going on. Like, we can play around like we have many times with what these things could actually be, and how they could operate. I think a lot of individuals have played this thought, even the government themselves. if they do have an understanding of something out there that is outside of the average knowing. But it is crazy, and it's happening in our time, and it's real. What's behind it is the question, but I think we'll get a lot of answers in due time. I think once certain things that want to be revealed, there's no hiding it, right? So yeah, David Grush, keep doing your thing. All those congressmen and congresswomen that behind it, I think y'all doing a great job. And to dive into a little, like, just go on a different angle, right? So since we're on the David Grush and U.A.P and just disclosing information, watching a lot of perspectives that is going on, especially with that Carmelo Anthony situation, and just I'm on X a lot, right? So, and I'm a fan of Elon Musk to certain degrees on like going to Mars and technology, certain technologies and perspectives that he have, and I disagree with certain other perspectives, right? And just to get on that race perspective real fast, as somebody who's black, right, by skin, Hispanic by culture, right, but I think we all have tactics. I think of how we portray our information, and depending of how we know how we have learned or taught ourselves how to convey that information. If an individual has enough insight, you could see it just how it's conveyed, right? So I think Elon Musk is expressing his feelings towards, the white race and how the white race is under attack, right? Which I think is false. I think the West is more than just the white race, right? So we're not going to say the white race is the West. I think the West is a idea of freedom. Now, if you want to get to the white individuals specifically within the West, I think that there's different dynamics and perspectives in different countries, right? Nobody's forcing anybody to live amongst each other on certain degrees. And every country is entitled to their perspective, and hopefully they can see past that dilemma of color identity and see that that's just an ignorant mindset and actually see that we're one as a species. And I think that would allow for a filter that has been overdue to be cleared out and us to see the full spectrum as it should be, which is we're all one species, right? But other than that, I think he's mad about South Africa and different things, especially because he can't get his company out there because he's white. I disagree with South Africa's perspective on how certain companies and individuals can operate over there because of color. That's kind of falling into the same game. And I think there's outside puppeteers behind that. But as an individual that expects, certain individuals to have a certain perspective and be able to control their emotions, at times I can't, so I can't blame him. But he has one of the biggest platforms. He can say whatever the fuck he wants. It's just shit. He bought Twitter, right? Just as I got, my website and I choose to post on his. He's allowed to say whatever he wants, and nobody's upset with that. But just on the color aspect, the white race is not under attack. There's a false ideology. I think that anger and that emotion from him derives off of just the things going off in South Africa. I think in the United States, we've had many issues, many problems in the past and currently with, of course, race perspectives. But the fact that we all still live next to each other and across the street, go to the grocery store, interact with each other, hire each other, work with each other and different things. Those are just thoughts and perspectives that everyone is entitled to towards different perspectives on different cultures. But is the white race under attack? Not at all. Most individuals in power are of white color. Him speaking as the richest man, coming as an immigrant to the United States, right, with not the knowledge of the average American and still being allowed to be the richest man on the planet shows you how the American system does work in certain dynamics. Now, how tied he is with the government, et cetera, and a lot of that's up to debate, but the facts can't be ignored. He is intelligent and he has good intentions. Now, we all have, like I do myself, misaligned those perspectives sometimes, but it is what it is. If my Spanish race or was under attack, then I would feel some type of way as well. It's a pride that it's embedded in all of us. But I think since he wants to go to Mars and he's one of the individuals pushing for it, going to becoming multiplanetary, I think it's within his job and task to make sure he keeps a balanced perspective and when he speaks, because when we go to Mars, we can't be racist. Well, the universe don't care about race or color and shit like that. It's about survival to certain degrees, and I think as long as we start taking that new perspective into these other planets, is what will help us as a species and as a race. But we're all entitled to our own opinion, and just like I'm speaking mine, on his opinion. And the only reason is because of, of course, I don't, like, one of my best friends is white. My best, closest friends were of all ethnicities. We didn't segregate like that. But with the Carmelo Anthony situation, since we're already on it, I think as somebody who, we all been in high school and we know how it gets. I used to gangbang, so I was crazy. I think I was more possessed on the possessed end, with the lack of knowledge as well. But, are you allowed to go to school with a knife? I don't think so, right? I don't know the laws over there or whatever. But if you're getting jumped, we all know from where we from, all that, that persona that we all wear, the doctor, this teacher, when it comes to survival, all that kind of goes out the window. Could he have just got jumped and took the beating? Yeah. Was he gonna get killed by that? And he probably believed that's why he had a knife, probably. Whatever his intention, like every kid in kind of high school, tries to carry a knife or something like that. If not, they have one in their room if they don't take it, to school. I, on the other hand, was, a little more hard-headed, so it's a little different. I can't speak with that pure mind like that when it comes to when I was that age, because I was real wild. So, fighting and all that was what we did. But I know as a kid how it comes, and they said he got jumped. So I think there's certain degrees. Should he had had a knife? I don't know. That's up to the law over there, and if the school determines, do they have that in their policy? Was it self-defense? I think it was defense. Now, does the knife play a different factor? I think that's a separate factor and a different charge. But since someone died because of that knife, that all plays into one factor, right? I think all of that should be kind of put into perspective. With the race, how, politics tries to attach itself to a lot of news or use a lot of events to attach to politics for that hyping. So I think this event is one of those prime examples. I think, not to bring Elon Musk again, but, using it to attach to use it as a way to say, well, we should, this us versus them, or this is a race, rather than it was kids in school fighting, and the situation got out of hand, right? Attaching race to it is where the politics come into play, and I think they manipulate it for that factor and that basis, right? So for us not to play victim or fall victim and have common sense, we're all adults, right? To say, well, there are kids and they were fighting and it got carried out of hand, and handling the situation like that, rather than like, yo, it was because he's white, because he's black, it's probably more on some gang shit than anything. But yeah, I think that's the perspective that we should have as adults, May rest in peace, whoever died, and sorry for the child that has to go through, his prison time or whatever he got to go through, you know what I'm saying, to kind of get back into society. But we all make mistakes, and I think if you've grown, advice is just don't fall victim to the politics. How politics tries to drag in, most events to get that emotional attachment, to divide literally, and just so you could get votes. It's like, well, I understand if that's your hustle, but still, I'm just calling it out from what I see it. We can do a lot better. We can be a lot better. And as someone who, on that same journey as I'll say most individuals. But yeah, it's crazy. Moving away from that, the Knicks. Let's get on the Knicks real quick, man. As a person born in New York, Harlem, 134 Amsterdam and Broadway, right? And moved after 9/11. So I have some birthrights to the Knicks, but I ain't no Knicks fan, to be honest. I'm a New York fan just off of birth. Naturally, I'm more of a Yankees fan, right? But that's, hopefully the Knicks win it all. It's like that unexpected. I don't know where they ran this algorithm that found these individuals and was like, yo, they could win, and based it maybe off prior wins with Villanova. But yo, it's crazy right now. Like, the Knicks is in the motherfucking championship and they could win. I'm not gonna say who's gonna win, who I think is gonna win. May they win and may the best man win. But it is crazy when you think about it, how long it's taken, and then it's like a team that it was out of nowhere what it feels like, right? It's wild, and I wish them the best. I know if New York does win, it's gonna be lit. Everybody be safe. I got a lot of family out there, but that shit gonna be lit. Y'all have fun. Man, his name is not coming into mind right now. That's kind of crazy, right? But I got his picture in my head. But yeah, the Knicks got one with him. Damn, what the fuck is why can I think of Jalen Brunson? There you go, Brunson. Brunson is clutch, right? And I'll give it to him. I think they picked a small team just to push that pace. And they smart for that. You feel me? Like they really are smart for that. And I'm laughing just because when I think about it, how it's so unexpected, But shout out New York Knicks. They definitely gonna get that dub. They deserve it. And may the best man win. Moving on from that, let's dive into these data centers. That's what I want to get into. I want to get into these data centers, and I want to get into, these politicians that are paid for. We got to use specific names, but the Zionists. And I don't say, this religion, that religion, because that's too broad. A lot of people have faith, right? As somebody who has his own faith. So I'm not going to just attach one religion, but I will say attach an ideology, which is that Zionist ideology, right? And the fact that, you have a group of individuals in America, right? I think that's because they're more from another place, just coming over here, jumping, and they're all on this group chat online, talking to each other like it's fucking... like they're a gang, doing the little gang meetings, and they're just talking about how they're gonna take over America, right? Let's just speak up about it for what it is. If when I say take over America, is use the system that of this country is founded off of for their advantages, which a lot of individuals will do, but it's supposed to be a system for all, and we're supposed to see how can we construct a system where it could work for all, not just for one group, right? But when you have individuals, from certain groups just all day, every week, thinking about how they're going to take over this group or this area and this land and this country, then if you have any survival skills, you would understand that you should pay attention to those things. So with these data centers, right, as a person that programs to certain degrees, and dabbles in that environment, I can say that there's no need for all these data centers. To say that these data centers are needed because of another foreign country's ability to build data centers, as that's a strategic advantage, right? So the government could have a data center, right, where it's military oriented, and it could store the information that is needed, and it doesn't even need to be that big, right? And then you could have a super intelligence to certain degrees. Now, what you have is private sectors and private companies wanting to build their own data centers, and every state pretty much house it so they can have different localities of information of everyone or of every individual stored, so they you know, if you look at it from a hood terminology, like they're selling something, they want it to a degree where they know everything you want to buy, so they could sell it to you, everything you're doing, so they could confine you even more. Put it in aspects where it benefits the government, these individuals and these places that are controlled by these private sector individuals through payments in certain aspects, right? Not all, but then and just it's just so they can store information about you, right, and have it for themselves. The internet already stores a lot of information. They just want to take it to degrees where they can train their models and their agents to understand you, and they could keep making money off of you. There's no perspective. There's nothing that has to do with China behind it or competing. Separating all these data centers and having one centralized, whereas you can configure however, but you really just have a bunch of different companies and individuals competing against each other, and they all fighting for you as a customer. That's really as basic as it gets. It's not nothing with China. It's competing with their markets, not militarily. That in that aspect, you know, it's that hype that is needed to mask the real intention. But we will run out of water. Using the ocean to cool these data centers is we. Even though all the water we don't drink, right? But still, in perspective, the way that our atmosphere, our cycle within our planet works, and our ecosystem, and how everything kind of exists with each other to certain degrees within a certain threshold of balance, to heat up our planet and boil our water that we drink, that we use, our most vital resources, it's greedy. They just want control to that degree, right? And anything they say it's somebody that's just ignoring the most basic fact, right? The government has stored large data centers in the oceans, you know, Microsoft, other companies, since the internet originated, even the wires in the water, in the ocean right now. You know, they create a certain amount of heat. And I've seen another researcher say, I don't know his name, I can't reference him right now, but that we're actually changing the anatomy of our planet because we're pushing so much energy into this wiring, right? And so much so it's almost like we're making our planet heavier. So you have that aspect, and then you want every private company to be able to put these data centers or cool them through the most vital resource. The math is there to a certain degree. Once it's not one data center, right? You're talking about hundreds, and then the scale of these hundreds count for what an average data center would be like 10 times, right? So they're really each one of those 100 is 100 with 100. The size of it is 100 times the natural size of a data center, right? So and pulls out the power 100, like almost 100 times that. So it amplifies very fast those numbers, right? So we're just gonna burn our planet, right? And then putting in Antarctica, they would just melt the ice too fast over time through if you have too many. So space, you know, like Elon Musk said, I agree with him, it's the best option. The only problem with that is if something goes wrong, we will have to go into space. And I said that before, but, you know, that's up to debate. But that's the best option. That's the smartest option. But we're not interfering with, you know, our natural resources. It's like making a car run off of water. To me, that's dumb. But that's just my perspective. It don't make it right. My perspective could be dumb. But yeah, so data centers, I think, ain't no good, man, to certain degrees. You know, there has to be, I ain't going to say restrictions because I ain't no bitch, but certain guidelines, right? Just to speak it down in more hood terminology. Like, it's just understand somebody's building this to control you. That's it. They're going to put a box, make you pay for it, right? And have all your information to control you, put cameras behind it. When you get that ticket in the mail because of that light that showed you speeding all these other fractions of like we're creating systems that we don't even really want, right? It's just other people that's chasing profit. And that ties into that, specific group of why I brought them up, because a lot of these politicians are paid for or they're tied into that group. I think there's I think our government is infested with individuals operating for different interests outside of the American interest. I think it's obvious. I think the Zionists have the one of the biggest footholds in our government. I think they purposely, it's the same. They're a country just like us, and to think that their task wouldn't be like our task, where we try to persuade or push our agendas onto other lands would be any different than we're stupid. But they're definitely persuading, I feel, a lot of our politicians. They're paying them off, right? They excuse my language, they're like the mob, right? They're a gang. They meet up online every day talking about laws they want to pass with individuals and places. And these laws are not for the best for you. These laws are literally for the best of this group, for what's best for this group specifically, right? If we used to take the Somalia situation, right? You see how it's constructed, like it's the best for what's this group, and they're stealing everything, and it's the same shit on a higher scale, right? It's a group outside of American interests that want to hijack this system, juice it, take everything they can and control it, put people in powers that they already have, where they control, where shit don't make sense because it's there's other interest involved, right? If it's so simple as this is good and this is bad, then all that bullshit won't be in between. You start seeing all the bullshit because there's other factors that come into play. And if we allow this too long, it won't be America no more, right? And it's our job, it's your job to make sure you vote for the right individuals, you make the right choices, and that's your perspective to have. But to think like, yo, this really won't happen, I think it'll just put us, to think this is not happening, I think just puts us in a bad position. I think it's something that needs dire attention, and everyone should be doing their job on that, because it's all of our freedom that's at stake when individuals is trying to use your freedom of speech and your rights as an American, my right that I love, to say what I think against me, right? If I ain't threatening nobody, if I ain't harming nobody, then how are you trying to hold me accountable for anything other than making sound? Which I'm trying to break it in the most simplest sense, and that's what we have, So I think understanding that our government is being compromised by, these Zionist individuals that have religious perspectives that go back thousands of years, it's going to just set America back more. And we just need to push forward. A lot of the problems we have is not even from our perspective to certain degrees. A lot of that perspective is mixed in with pushing, of course, the American agenda, right? Freedom. But look at what angles, but we push it everywhere, really. So we're smart. The people that even created that group in that area, it was all purposely done. They know what they're doing. There's higher levels, I think, of puppeteers, and they'll say it's a conspiracy. But yeah, I think, just the higher the money goes, the higher the influence, and then, it's bloodlines and different things. But yeah, we definitely have to put more attention to that. And I think us lacking to do that would just set us back as a species, in the most simplest terms. Like, it's kind of crazy how much influence they have over the president. And I know Trump, I ain't saying Trump ain't a bitch, he gonna speak how he feels. He's not gonna bite his tongue, but it seems like, that money they must be throwing is long, but it don't even make sense because, when you're in that position, it should be more than the money, but I guess it's always about the money, especially with individuals like that. But, at a certain degree, we all gonna die, so it should be more than just the money. But I guess that's why I haven't reached that level yet, But Yeah, it's kind of crazy, man. Um, Hopefully, we just tighten down. CIA, FBI, all you alphabet boys. Y'all checking all the hood people. Y'all probably check my shit out, checking whoever, make sure y'all checking these individuals out that are paid in these political spheres don't have no fear, right? I know the ones that are tied in with them won't listen, but the ones who ain't, check it out, because my common sense, can see it. So I don't know how yours can't. Now the loopholes is where they get you. So I understand, but bringing light to it is what we can do. And I think that's the best thing, right? Not turning that blind eye, one of the favorite terms. But yeah, it's a crazy world out there. Um, war's still going on. We're trying to get better. Um, but it is what it is. Um, on the next subject, though, all these missing scientists, right? So you see, look how everything ties into each other. The fact that we're disclosing a lot of attention, of course, on these missing scientists is with the attention of the U.A.P to certain degrees. And you have all the conspiracists behind it doing work through information that they found, or just individuals that are curious, trying to understand things that the government failed to do, right? Because we're all, what is the government? An individual that is like me and you, a task by individuals that you paid for or you voted in to investigate. So you can learn shit too. You don't have to be dumbfounded and just let other people ask the questions for you. Ask your own questions. Learn how to ask it. And when you say, well, why the fuck is scientist and why the fuck is all these doctors disappearing at the same time of this U.A.P disclosure, or have they always been missing and the light is just being brought up because of this disclosure? I think it's the hand in hand. It's a good question to ask, and may they be found. I think the government and people in the private sectors of these other countries, whatever is the actual, I haven't put my full intuition onto it, but I would say it's obviously what it shows to be something that can't be explained yet. Mostly all things are explained really fast.